Why I voted no. So, this video is going to be one that obviously creates discussion around the new Revenant Caves update that's been proposed in old school RuneScape. However, I'll be trying to give as impartial an opinion as I can while giving you guys facts on both sides. You guys can then go from there and critically think about what you've been given and decide on your own and vote as you please. I'm not trying to lure you one way or the other into voting one way, but I do want you guys to actually think about what you're doing and just kind of give you guys as insightful as an opinion as I can. Now, if you guys want to go ahead and debate this in the comments down below with me and others, feel free, but try to do it in a lively manner that doesn't really berate one person or another for the way they think, because that's not going to make people come together. That's just going to widen the gap between ideas. So if you guys end up commenting, please take that into account. With that said, let's go ahead and get on into it. So why I voted no, we will get to here in a second, but the one thing I do think has to be addressed is really the disconnect between the PvP and the PvM/skilling community and why some things don't end up working. So there is an inherent problem with the PvP system right now. PvP currently is heavily reliant on the fact that there are PvMers and skillers in the wilderness to kill. These PvMers and PvPers are doing high risk, high reward methods that will allow them obviously to make more money, but at a risk of dying. Now, that's not necessarily something I disagree with. I think that that should be something you have, but I think the problem is having actual PvPers be the high risk. Now, back in the day, there were revenants in the wilderness, but these were relatively low risk. Even the high level ones you could get away from pretty easily. The thing is, if you have an NPC kill someone, they understand, all right, that's an NPC, there's nothing I can change about that. That thing killed me, I can get better and try to defend myself. With PKers though, there becomes a whole different thing where if you get a clan of PKers on someone in level 40 wilderness, you're not getting away. There's really no way to go about it. But the problem is, whenever you die to these PKers, sometimes they handle it with grace and they tell you GG, or they don't say anything at all. But you have those people that are very toxic, and that isn't a statement on the PvP community as a whole. I understand that that's not all of them. The problem is that's the impression that the PvMers get whenever they die. They see these people tell them to sit and call them a fag as they die, and they get really upset with it, and they start to resent the community as a whole. That's of no fault of the entire community, but that is something that's there and something that needs to be addressed. A lot of this rejuvenation stuff is really bridging a gap between the PvM and the PvP community, and I think it's something that we really need to address, because it could be something in the future that creates these pulls where nothing in the PvP world will ever pass because people are so resentful. Now, a way to go about fixing this would be just to make PvP more enjoyable. The best way to rejuvenize PvP is to make it incentivizing and to make it enjoyable for the people doing it. How you do that, you can introduce new motivations as far as PKing. Really, the one thing we have right now is a bounty system where you get emblems and they build on each other, but really that's not all too entertaining, and it's pretty mundane for the most part, and I think at this point we're all pretty bored of it. Granted, do we need another PvP switch? I don't know. That's a topic for a different day, but you do need to provide something that's more incentivizing to PvP rather than just to kill other PvMers, because that is just not the way to go about it, in my opinion. Overall, I do believe that people want PvPing to be enjoyable. I do believe that people want to see PvPers enjoy the game that they play, but at the cost of so many things being introduced, I think we should focus more so on the actual content of PvP itself and how enjoyable it is to actually PK, rather than just pushing more people to the wilderness for clans to kill. Now, as to why I voted no. So, one thing that I've been pretty disappointed about in this entire thing is, while I do understand that Rev Caves are something that brings back a lot of nostalgia for people, I think that they could be introduced in an entirely different format or in something just more creative. Overall, this seems to be the exact update that they implemented into the live game, and while I do play a game that is a replication of an older game, I do it in the sense that I'd like to see where this game goes and see it go on a different route than the main game. That's one of the things. If I wanted to play the main game, I would go on RS3 and do it. Now, obviously, the main reason people don't play it is because of the mechanics of the game, but I also really just enjoy how this game has been able to take an entirely different route, and I feel like to introduce the first big piece of content into PvP in a long time and do it in the exact same format as one before, I feel like it's just really lazy, and honestly, that is a very big part of it. I don't feel as if we as a community should settle for updates that are an exact replica of stuff that doesn't necessarily need to be there. This hasn't been something that's been hugely pushed by the entire community, as it's been 3 to 4 years now since the game's been out, and this is now the first time that they're really pushing it on us. On top of that, many people are pushing the idea that Rev Caves are going to be useless if they don't have any signature drops, and that is true. That does make sense, but there is no reason that the signature drops that the Revs drop have to be the exact same from the live game. If I don't want the new best in slot melee armor to be introduced, you can create something that is different that would also be incentivizing to go there, but just wouldn't be the best armor in the game. Now, I do understand that this best armor in the game comes at the cost of only being able to wear it for 1 hour and only having stats be affected in PvP areas. I get that. But the problem is once you start introducing new best in slot armors, whether or not it's the PvP or the actual regular game where PVMers take place, eventually it's going to create a kind of subculture that wants those armors to be everywhere in the game. If you start seeing new best gears, you're going to eventually want them yourself, and for a lot of people these 1 hour time limits won't be enough to actually be able to use this in a practical way, so they'll start to want it in other aspects of the game. And even if not, we're already showing that as a community, if this passes, we're willing to introduce it. I really don't want to see any of this introduced into the main game, and while I think that Jagex has enough of a hold to be able to see that, I don't know if that necessarily is something I can guarantee on. So by voting no, I'm putting my foot in the sand and I'm saying that it stops here. I'm not going to promote the introduction of new best in slot armors, whether or not it's only in PvP related scenarios. I feel like there are other ways to revitalize PvP other than a set of armor. Now, one thing that I do think is very strange is the fact that they only introduced the armors. Now, obviously a lot of people didn't like the Statius Warhammer and the Vestas Longsword and whatnot because they were so OP, but if you're making PvP more enjoyable, I feel like that's the way to go about it, is different weapons. What good does it do me to vote for new best in slot armor when the armor overall is going to give you a very minuscule upgrade and may increase your max hit by 1 or 2? That doesn't seem to be something as enjoyable for the PvP community or me to even watch as a viewer of PvP content, rather than seeing cool special attacks that people can do. Now, you know, introducing special attacks as the main form of PvP content obviously is something that's very slippery, because then you start to get into the Karasi sword and stuff like that, which maybe people don't want to go down that route. But I would personally be more incentivized to vote for this stuff if I actually could see cool weapons instead of just new armors that are very expensive and do relatively nothing in regards to how the PvP is actually done. If I'm watching someone PK, I want to see cool weapons being used and cool hits being done, not just the same AGS spec but another 1+ damage to it. I don't feel as if that's all too entertaining, because I would much rather enjoy seeing a different weapon being used than just a +1 on a red hit mark that really just doesn't even seem to be relevant to me, because I wouldn't even know the difference between a max AGS spec at, say, a 76, for example. I don't even know what it would be in a practical PvP scenario to 77. It really means nothing to me, and I wouldn't be all that impressed. In addition to why I voted no for the armors and whatnot, and why I voted no for other Revenant Cave type items, I would like to say that I have voted yes to some of this stuff. I will go and show you my poll right now. There are things that I actually think should be introduced to the game, surprisingly enough. While I know this may have sounded pretty down up until now, there are things that I would like to see. Now, this is one that obviously is quite strange. The Amulet of Peril, I think it introduces an entirely different type of item to the game that I don't want to see. This amulet is pretty much just being charged while PKing, and it charges from a very bad amulet to a very good amulet, and that's just, I don't want to see sliding skill type items that are introduced, because if you introduce it to an amulet, what's to stop you from doing it anywhere else? And I don't want to worry about PKing and then having someone have a powered AGS compared to my regular AGS. While I know that that may be something that isn't practical, it's something that could happen in different forms. As you guys can see here, loot key scrolls sounds perfectly fine to me. I'm all for it. As far as only being able to do 5 keys per scroll, I really don't care. I'd rather just see all the keys per scroll, because I like seeing people be able to enjoy all of their drops rather than being killed by rushers that are sitting there with protect melee on and sitting at 114 HP. They're never going to get killed, and they're really just ruining it for the average player. I voted yes to 3 out of these 7 questions, and really I think that that's ultimately the thing. Some things aren't just all or nothing. There aren't people that only voted no or only voted yes to a lot of these things. There are problems with certain things. As I said with the Amulet of Peril, there's obviously a problem of introducing an entirely new weapon. I'm not voting no to it because I hate the PvP community. I'm voting no because I don't like the idea of the object in the game. I love new content. I want to see people have new stuff to do, but I just think it should be done in different ways sometimes. Another example of this is the Revenant Cave bracelets, or the Revenant Cave Van braces that were proposed to be released. Now, these were proposed at a 1 in 9,000 rate from the best Revenant within the cave. Now, one thing that I don't understand is why after 3 to 4 years would you release the best ranging gloves within the game and do so in a recycled format of the game? You're just adding in something to another form of the game. It isn't anything new, but you're just adding in that piece of you're just adding in that new item onto something that was already old. If I want to see the best ranging gloves in the game, I'd much rather see it come through the form of a Slayer boss or some sort of boss that is entertaining and fun to kill and will create a lot of hype because people will want to kill kill it for that. I don't want to see people getting lucky at the rev caves by killing a random rev and just getting a 1 in 9,000 drop rate of the rarest vambraces. And on top of that, a 1 in 9,000 drop rate was proposed from the best one. Why would I ever want the best item within the game? While I do think that best items within the game should be at a relatively high price, these are going to be the best ranging gloves, and they're coming in at the drop rate of almost double a pet. And ultimately, to be able to kill the best revenant, it's going to take you a decent amount of time, and a 1 in 9,000 drop rate on that seems like way too much time to spend to actually be able to get these glove drops, which in turn means that these vambraces would sit at an extremely high price and would be relatively out of reach for most of the player base of the game. So I don't think that that's the best way to go about introducing new items into the game either. I think new items should be introduced through new content rather than just recycled content with new drops. So this isn't something that's entertaining for me, and personally it's something I'm not going to vote for because I don't want to see that be the precedent that we as a community set. And so overall, I know I just kind of went on a rant, just shitting on everything left and right, and I really do think that a lot of this stuff can be improved upon, and that's why I'm voting no. I'm not voting no because I don't like the idea of PvP content being pushed into the game, and I don't like the idea of having new stuff for PvPers to enjoy. I just think that some of it can be done better than it currently is, and I think that's the big thing, is we just need to improve on what we got. We don't have to settle for the first thing that comes our way. As a voting community, you can decide to actually make them do better and make JX make better updates. Now, not to say that they're obviously introducing anything terrible. I just think that there's some small improvements in regards to practically every part of this update that could be improved upon, and that would be stuff that I'd like to see. Don't get this as me trying to go against PKers. I love PKers, and I love the fact of just PKing being a popular thing again. It's something that I really enjoyed, and I'm going to definitely enjoy whenever rev caves come out. Whether or not they come out with drops or not, I'm sure JX will find a way to introduce them in a way that's fun and exciting for the PKing community, and I sure hope that it is something that PKers will enjoy and actually want to do, because this is going to be probably one of the most fun and entertaining parts of the PKing community that we've seen in quite a while. So it's definitely going to be something that I look forward to. I definitely want to PK, and I definitely want to see this do well, but I just think that there are certain aspects that can be improved upon. So this is coming from a point where I just want to see the game move forward in a way that I think is best. I definitely still want to see people have fun, and I want to actually have fun PKing, because it's been a while since I've been able to do that. So hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a point where I just want to see the game do better, as I've said before, and at times during this video I may have sounded a little bit salty, or a little bit more salty than need be, but that's because there's this whole narrative push by pretty much everyone that's against people voting no, that they just think we're a bunch of scumbags that just don't want to see the PKing community go well. And as I said earlier with the PKing community, how a few can ruin it for the bunch, I think that's the same here. I think there's a lot of people that are very outspoken on Twitter and in a lot of places that decide that they just don't want to see PKing communities thrive, and they don't want to see the PKing community do well, so they just trash them. And I understand that that's why we get this reputation for the people that voted no. We get the reputation of that we just don't want to see fun and exciting stuff put into the game because we hate certain groups of people. That's absolutely not it for me, and hopefully you guys can understand that, and hopefully I've demonstrated that throughout this video. With that said, if there's anything you guys would like to discuss, feel free to in the comments down below. I'll make sure to respond to as many of you guys as I can. On top of that, make sure that it is a lively discussion and not one that you are just trying to be toxic in, because or else you're really not moving forward in any way. So hopefully you guys take that into consideration. And on top of that, if you guys liked the video, make sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to my channel for future content. With that said, hopefully we can get past this as a community. Hopefully we can find a good medium where this update will be fun and enjoyable for us all. So with that said, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and peace.